Muddiest skills for chapter 2. Looking at your chapter 2 skills I've learned, this particular problem is bothering people. We want to evaluate minus the absolute value of negative x if x is 22. First step is to replace the x by 22. And priority of operations is we take the absolute value first before we subtract. The absolute value of any number, is always its positive. So that's going to be a plus 22. I'm going to put a parenthesis around it. We now want to subtract it or take the opposite. So the answer is minus 22. Number of people said they are having problems with positive and negative numbers. In this problem, we're asked to add and subtract positive and negative values. Notice this minus sign. This means this number 23 is negative, whereas this same symbol, same size, because of its location, means subtract. So we're subtracting this negative number, we're adding this negative number, and we're subtracting understood a positive number. The first step should be to change every subtraction to an equivalent addition thinking. So this subtraction becomes add if we take the opposite, and the opposite of negative 18 is plus 18. And this subtraction becomes the opposite if we take, this subtraction becomes addition if we take the opposite of this number, which was a positive, so it becomes a negative number. Let's put back the rest of the problem. And let's add left to right. So when we add a negative, bigger negative to a smaller positive, take the sign of the larger, which is negative, and then take 18 from 23, which would be 5. So we have negative 5. That's going to be added to a negative 7. It's going to be added to a negative 20. Now we're adding two numbers that are negative, like signs. So we get a bigger negative number, negative 12. Added to a negative 20. Finally, we're going to add two negative numbers. They're like signs, so we get a larger negative number, minus 32. Let's read this problem carefully. Use this diagram to find the difference. Difference means subtract an elevation between E and B. Let's see. E is minus 288. We want the difference between E and B, so we want to subtract from that the value of B, which is also a negative, negative 437. This is a subtraction problem of two negative values. We change subtraction to add. If we we find the opposite of the number that follows, so that becomes a plus 437. So now we want to add a negative number and a positive number. So I'm going to put the positive number up top, 437. I'm going to put 288 underneath it. And I'm going to add a negative number and a positive number. So the bigger number is positive, so it's going to be a positive result. 8 from 17, that would be 9. 8 from 12, that's going to be 4. 2 from 3 would be 1. Double check myself. 9 and 8 is 17. 5 and 8 is 13. And 2 and 2 is 4. So the answer to this problem is a positive 149, or just 149 is okay. All right, this problem bothers people. It wants us to multiply, but we need to interpret it correctly. So this one says minus 1 to be squared. I'm going to compare that to quantity minus 1 to be squared. Exponent tells us how that we need to repeat the base as a product. Without the parentheses, only the 1 is getting repeated. So it's minus 1 times 1. So the answer to this problem is -1. We're only repeating the 1, not the negative sign. Whereas if we have the parentheses, we're repeating the parentheses. So therefore, it's a -1 times a -1, and the answer would be +1. So be careful on this one. This always bothers people. The exponent only affects what it is touching. In this case, the parentheses, and in this case, the number 1. Let's read the problem. In 2008, there were 33,474 analog movie screens. In 2012, this number of screens dropped, went downward to 6,078. Find the change in the number of analog movie screens from 2008 to 2012. Well, there's two ways of looking at this. I noticed it dropped, so it's going to be, the answer should be a negative number. So I could just subtract the final answer from the original problem and put a negative because we dropped in value rather than increasing in value. Or note the word change. The word change means subtract. So if we're subtracting, we take the value in 2012. So in 2012, we had 6,078 videos. And in 2008, we had 33,474 videos. So we want to find the change. We take the value in 2012, which is 6078, and we subtract because we want to change the value in 2008, which is 33,474. And if we subtract, which is like adding an opposite, so 6078, add the negative 33,474. We're adding unlike signs, take the sign of the larger, and the answer turns out to be -27,396. Now, I didn't do it quite that way. I just said that it was a drop, so I just took the smaller number from the bigger and put a negative sign because of the drop. What was the average change per year? Well, there's 4 years difference, 2008 to 2012. So I'm going to take -27,396 divided by the number of years. So the average drop per year is -6,849. So two ways of looking at the problem. This problem, 2.5.41, says we want to simplify this expression. Well, we need to use PEMDAS, and we need to take the absolute value, which is a grouping symbol, first. So we first subtract the 9 minus 27, which is going to be -18. And I'm not doing anything else. I'm writing everything else out. After we subtract it within the absolute value symbol, we need to take the absolute value. Remember, the absolute value of any number, positive or negative, is always a positive result. So that's +18, still times -2, divided by -2. Now, we have PEMDAS. PEMDAS says multiply, divide as we go left to right. So don't divide first. We need to multiply first. So in this case, 18 times -2 is -36. Now divide by -2. Dividing two negatives is always a positive, and 2 into 36 is 18.